The home run scenario would be like a virtual main street that if you think about, a VR experience and I'm walking down Ludex Main Street and to the right, there's a Fanatic store and I can turn in there and buy merch, or I can go to Tops and buy that, or I can go to Pokemon and buy some cards there.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
And today we're joined by my good friend, BRIAN LUDDEN. And he has formed an awesome company. It's called Ludex. And he's going to tell you all about it. Shane's going to have an awesome time in today's episode because Shane is going to nerd out. These guys are going to talk about everything, cards and pricing and scanning. And I honestly am probably just going to sit here silently, and that's all good. But BRIAN, welcome to the show, my man. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh man, thanks for having me. It's awesome that we have, we're talking on many different fronts. So this should be a fun conversation, and we'll keep it flowing because Shane and I could geek out for probably 3 hours. So
yes,
we'll try to get a little more efficient than that.
At the minimum.
Listen, I love it though. The thing that really strikes me about BRIAN is just his dedication to entrepreneurship. He's not only been building this really cool business, but he has so much business acumen within him. He's been basically a lifelong entrepreneur. And so this is just one of many great accomplishments and feats that he's working on. So today we're going to dive into his current venture. Shane, I'm going to let you lead. Actually, hold on. BRIAN, before I let Shane take the wheel here, can you please tell our listeners what it is that you're doing, how you guys are doing it, what makes you guys awesome, and then Shane can dive in with you.
All right, awesome. So I'll give you like kind of 31,000 foot view of what Ludex is. Ludex was created like a lot of ideas in entrepreneurial. It's like I wanted to solve a problem for myself, and then once I realized that there's a bigger market behind this, that's when I first got the bug to start Ludex. But really what it was is I believe in reducing friction along the lines. And I was trying to get back in this collecting hobby. Probably, I ended in 88 and I want to get back in with my son. It's a great way for kids to manage money. It's a great way for us to spend time together. It's a great way for them to negotiate with adults and communicate. So my son and I were sitting there. We buy a new pack of cards. These new cards, I've never seen anything like them. They're like lasers and all this background, and they call them parallels. And so I'm like, what the hell is that? And I start Googling it and looking for images, and I'm like, I have no idea what the heck this is. So I went to ask a few buddies about it, and they're like, no, dude, it's Google, and then you go to eBay and you try to find your card. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, this is freaking, 2020 or whatever. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. So I did a bunch of research and I realized that this industry has not had a tech revolution yet. And I saw it in the financial world. I started with pen and paper, math in my head, and ended with a screen that was telling me to do everything. So I didn't have to think at all. So anyways, I went and I started this company. So we scan cards on your phone. It's an app, and we have about almost 200 million scans up to date. We've been at it for 3.5 years. We've been out in market for about 18 to 20 months. And we just simply take a picture. 3 seconds later, we tell you what the card is. If there's pricing on it, we grab pricing from the different resources that we throw into, write a simple algorithm to try to get the right price range. But really, it's identification of cards. So therefore, I could have opened that pack, and then I could have had that Ludex scan it, and now I become knowledgeable, informed, empowered, and now I'm enjoying the industry. So really, that's what it is. So within seconds, you could start learning about the industry.
So the cool thing about this scanner too, and I'm curious on if it does one of ones, which I'm sure it does. I'm sure it doesn't give a price point on there, but I think if I was part of that application there, and I was card chasing for one of ones, for parallels, prisms, ices, whatever it may be. If I was on your app and saw that this one of one was already scanned, now I feel like the chase, I don't need to purchase this $10,000 box, $15,000 box to try to get this. It's like, it's already been scanned. Here it is. So my first question is, does it scan, why wouldn't it, one of ones, and does it say that it's been scanned, and is that information public?
Yeah, it's interesting. You can scan anything. Remember AI, AI has to be taught by a human being.
Mm,
And because of that, it has to see the images. So a 101 would be absolutely new to us. So we wouldn't be able to identify it or price it. Now,
mm,
you can manually put it into your collection, but the low number cards are really difficult. But what we can do is as we roll out V2, it's going to be a much more social component to Luddex.
mhm,
And that's where we're like, share your 101s. Did
mm.
anyone pull a 101? Right. And if they do, we could have the 101s like that kind of highlighted and be like, hey, the 101's been pulled from, Prism, whatever. I don't think that manufacturers are going to love that.
I'm on the board of directors now, right? Like, does that count as one of the ideas? I'm just kidding.
Shane's an
Yeah,
advisor.
yeah, you're an official advisor, and you're gonna have to talk to Panini and Topps and be like,
Right.
they want to hide that as long as possible. But the
We'll see.
fact of the matter is collecting it's a social hobby. It's a social environment. People want to show their stuff off, and anything that Ludex can do to make it bigger than just a card, right? You scan a card. I mean, how many times am I going to scan a Ken Griffey Jr. card? Not
Right.
much. But what if I come back and I know that, there's other Chicago Bears fans on here, and there's other LeBron James fans on here, and now there's a social component. We also have a way to sell cards on marketplaces. So
Interesting.
really, it's an ecosystem that we want to create. That's really the experience of collecting.
I don't want to talk too much about this, but you said that you're a Bears fan. And if that's true, I apologize for the last 2 weeks. It's definitely been brutal there. I mean, you guys got a block kick from Green Bay and came back in that Minnesota game. And I thought Bears were going to win it on that point. But
They're the Bears. Okay,
yeah,
you want to hear something worse?
go ahead, please. Can it get worse?
I'm a White Sox fan too.
Oh, yeah, it could get worse. I didn't know this was going towards too. Oh man! All right, so you're used to disappointment here for the
Yeah,
last 40 years.
yes. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good.
So back to this. Now you're saying the social aspect here, and can my collection at this point in time is it public? Can I see what other people have? There's a company out there, and they're no longer in business, called DCHRO that actually were one of the first to come to market with NFT versions. They went out of business, but what you were able to do is you were scan it, upload it. It actually showed the card number there. And then you could actually have a platform where you can actually trade it, sell it, whatever it may be. And the company got a portion of that sell almost as like, a transition. So what are the capabilities now that this can do? And what are you guys looking to in the future for this social aspect here? Because I think that's the really exciting part, especially somebody who's really involved into trading cards, to get me to come over there.
Yeah. Well, social. So it's as simple as getting groups of people with common interests
Hmm.
together. So if I ask, like Vin, who's your favorite baseball team?
Oh man, you asked the wrong guy. I don't watch sports.
Okay, Shane.
Dodgers.
Okay, you go to the Dodgers, right? And so the social component's all about data. Every time you scan a card, Ludex picks up 20 points of data. What card, what year, what player, what team, where did you scan it? How much is the card worth, right? So let's say you scan 500 Dodgers cards. We then say, hey, you earned your Dodgers badge, and here's 700 people just like you in the same, and then you create that little ecosystem. Inside that ecosystem, you guys can trade amongst each other on the platform, and then it's all about that like micro communities, right? And the place. I mean, look at what you have behind you. You got a signed helmet, you got a signed football, I got signed helmets. I want to flex that stuff, and there's nowhere really to do that, and
Yeah.
there's no way to express you as a collector. So in the next 6 months, we will have social sharing.
Mm.
We will have the ability to make your account public. We will have the ability to trade amongst your peers. We'll have the ability to go to a Ludex marketplace. And that's really the push that we're making. The home run scenario would be like a virtual main street that if you think about a VR experience, and I'm walking down Ludex Main Street, and to the right there's a Fanatic store, and I can turn in there and buy merch, or I can go to Tops and buy that, or I can go to Pokemon and buy some cards there. And then it's kind of like the Fortnite that my kids play or whatever that is. That's like down the road. But today it's about, could we get the tech to work at a level that is acceptable? And we're over 90% accuracy in 3 seconds. So we got that. Then can you get critical mass? Can we get enough people on this? And we have 2.2 million downloads. We have 200 million cards scanned. So now we have that, right? And now we take that community and now we open it up to this whole nother experience. And we're going to do coins, stamps, paper money, albums, comic books. We'll be able to do all that because our technology looks at it as just a two-dimensional card, really.
I mean, you're talking about so many facets on different platforms and making it futuristic and making it a community where the relationship aspect alone is going to be massive. I'm very curious on how the virtual aspect's going to work in that, but I see the big picture here. I have two more questions so far. Does it grade graded cards? Does it scan graded cards and give you projections there? And if so, what grading companies is it? The main ones like CGC, BGS, and PSA, or does it scan graded cards and give you projected value there and give you the pop report?
Yeah. So right now we can scan all the grading companies.
All the main ones?
Yeah. PSA, Beckett, CCG, SGC.
SGC. Okay.
Yeah, and then the other ones too. We could get in there. We're building out the APIs to get into the database, and we'll pull the as much data as possible. But yeah, we have graded cards for sure.
That's awesome. Then, I mean, should I keep going?
I mean, I'm just learning. So if I got something that I don't honestly know enough about that's not already being explained, I'll jump in. But this is all new to me. I just love when we're building stuff, so I'm having fun.
My next question is, because we're talking about a wide variety of different trading card platforms, right? And how old does it go? Because I also love football cards, but I'm old school. I love wax boxes, right? Wax packs, wax boxes. I'll still chew the gum. I don't care. I'm risking it, if I get a disease from it. But how old does it go, and what variations of trading cards is allowed on the platform?
Yeah, so I mean, I won't get the year right, but I can probably get the decade. I think 1880. The 1880s is when the first card was printed, and during that time, if you doing some market research and some math and figuring some stuff out, since 1880, I believe that there's about 1.2 trillion cards that have been printed, and that includes Magic, Pokemon, all the trading card games. So if you look at that, it goes all the way back to 1880. So we can get any card. Like I said, if we see enough of the pictures, we can train it, we can get it. So it doesn't really matter to us. We're kind of agnostic to years. It's just about the card.
Oh, I got a question. I figured out one. Guys, don't count me out yet. Okay. He's in. Tap me in, coach. That's a sports term, right? Yeah. So when you scan the cards, could people tell, or could your system tell if the card is damaged and price it accordingly, or is it just going to give you a rough estimate based on the card you have?
Good question. So I started out in my original deck, which is pretty funny to look back at 3.5 years later and what we are today and what I thought we'd be. So our technology can do a really good job at centering. So there's 4 components to grade a card. There's centering, there's edges, there's corners, and there's surface. Okay? We can do the first 3. We can get the centering, we can do edges and corners. The surface on a phone it's almost, for now, with the technology out there today, is almost unsolvable, because we know when people take pictures of a card on their phone, you have different lighting. You could have a crack on your lens. You could have a piece of hair going through it. It could be oiled. And so it's very, very difficult to get the surface grade.
Yeah, and then to put more context onto that too, there's another competitor out there that's terrible that I've bought from called TCG, and they will classify a card as near mint or VLP, which is very light play. And for those exact reasons that Brian said, they're only taking consideration from like a bird's eye view. And if I'm buying anything with a holographic on it, you can't really tell if it's got print lines, scuffs, scratches. The other stuff you can really tell from behind that's not holographic, that edge wear, if the corner is bent, if it has a crease in it. But that front bird's eye view for even just the hollow pattern of the front of the card, you need at least 4 or 5 variations and angles from it to really depict the where it's at. But I can't tell you how many times people have been burned from that company that I just named, saying it's a certain condition and it's not, and then now you're on bad terms with that company from buying it there. So I like that.
Yeah.
I like that, and solidly commit to the ones that you should be able to commit to.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's like there's a couple of things that tech is. It's expensive. It's stubborn, but it does pay you back over time if you can figure it out, right? So like the scalability of technology really helps companies if you make it through these, the phase one. But if you look at the companies that, I don't want to be an authority in anything, right? Like if I'm an authority, that means it's another level of accountability, right? And so what I want to do is Ludex just wants to be the most powerful informational tool in the industry. So if we want to say, hey, based on these 3 characteristics of this card, we think it's good, average, or poor, or not, or we just let it go and say we hope our people are somewhat reasonable with the subjectivity of what this means. So grading for me, I could see that being a really frustrating thing. And I just don't know if I want to take that on because it's really subjective to begin with. And we'll try to help as much as we can, but in the end, it's there's so much subjectivity to it. And hey, let me tell you, Vin, a story, because this is how important grading is. Okay, so 1980, there's this guy Ricky Henderson. Ricky Henderson, that's his rookie card. Let's say that there was like 25, 30 million of these cards printed. There's only been about 5,000 10s, right? A Ricky Henderson 10, I think traded for $200,000. A 9 trades for $900. And the difference between a human being looking at that and being like, hey, this is 200 grand and this is 9. And then an 8 trades for the same as it was if it wasn't graded. So the subjectivity of grading is an issue. And there's a lot of companies trying to solve the issue of grading subjectivity, but they have a long way to go and a lot of competition.
And why do all of these things impact it so much? Like what does it matter how the cards are cut and the centering and all those points that you just put out? Like what makes that the thing that makes the card so valuable and expensive? I'm sure that's probably a pretty seemingly obvious question, but for someone who doesn't fully understand it, what would you say?
I mean, it's really about, Shane, you could chime in, but it's really about scarcity. Like if you're one of those 5,000 people that have this card, you have something that's really valuable. And if there's, a million Ricky Henderson fans out there trying to collect Ricky Henderson cards and you have something, it's really the supply and demand. I think that's my answer, Shane.
Well, wait, I got to follow up to that real quick. So why is it that all cards aren't perfect? How come all the cards aren't just centered with good corner cuts and all this other crap?
All right.
I could take that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you're not the expert here, Shane. No, you are, but go ahead.
I created my own card company, so
I want to hear it from Brian. He's the guest. You're the Shane.
No, I want to hear from Shane.
So it's all about how it's cut. These are cut by machines, and I wanted to use another one too. Jerry Rice in a PSA 10 is about $80,000. In a 9, $1,500. So especially for older sports cards, because they used old school methods and techniques when they were cutting it when it came fresh off the press. You couldn't get the exact same things that you can now, which this modern, that's what TCG is called now, modern versus vintage. These modern cards, it's pretty much very easy to do, to cut the same 40 sheets all the same way. So when you see a pop report of 20,000 that are all 10s, it's going to drive the market down. old school cards, companies that are out of business like Wizard of the Coast, that's what you get. So it's harder to get something graded because of the way that it was cut.
Yeah, I agree with
So
that. And to add to it, they had no quality control back in the 80s and 90s. They were putting out so many cards that they actually stopped. They ruined their own business for 20 years. They printed so many cards. The number is that they said that they printed 300 cards for every man, woman, and child in America, and they were burning them by the end because they crushed the supply and demand. I mean, there's dudes sitting there with a cutter, probably have a cigarette, back in the day in the 80s, 70s, probably have a cigarette, cutting these things. The blade's probably terrible. I mean, it is an accident based, and those numbers show it. It would be a pure accident to cut it once, twice, three, four perfectly. It's an accident. And
I
so
mean,
that's what.
yeah, 100%. Sorry, I just wanted to say, even like the Ricky Mantle card, which was the first ever graded PSA card, and it's owned by, I forget which sports team he owns.
Diamondbacks.
Diamondbacks, but it's the highest graded Ricky Mantle card out there, and it's valued 20, 30, 40 million. It's all subjective to what somebody's actually going to pay. I think it's actually a little lower than that. But that's the reason why. When you look at that card and you look at the centering and the condition, and considering everything that he said, and people used to just throw those cards away. I think most of it, they actually stopped production on it because it was an under-seasoned or undervalued team at that time. But now we're talking over 100 years ago. Yeah, close to it. But anyways, you're absolutely right. No quality control. They are cut by hand, and it's so hard to get high grades, which is why getting a 10 or even seeing that, it's night and day difference from a 9. But you'll get a lot of people out there that'll buy 10, 20, 39s, cut them all open, and hope to get that 10, which does happen. PSA, CGC, BGS, King of the... I'm not going to say anything as far as ethics are concerned, but there's been some cases out there that, money talks. But, who am I? So, anyways, that's a different conversation. I'm going on a tangent now about grading
all
companies.
right, no tangents on corruption within the card trading world. Or save that for some other podcast. So, Brian, I got a few other questions for you that I could actually ask because they're not necessarily card related. One of the biggest things that we like to focus on here in this podcast is really getting into the nitty gritty weeds of business. What have been some of the biggest challenges that has come up for you in building this business specifically, whether it was the software development piece, the building the right team, like the tech? What would you say was one of the most challenging obstacles to overcome for you?
Yes, all of those.
Spectacular.
So for me, I'm not a tech person, and I made a lot of mistakes. I call it tuition. I had to pay a lot of tuition to start learning about technology, how I could learn about the language and how we're doing things and why we're doing things. So that was the first obstacle. Now,
Mm,
I believe in a simple concept, and that concept is I don't need to know everything. What I need to do is I need to hire great people around me that know what they're doing. And
mm,
so a good leader doesn't care, isn't intimidated by people who really know their craft, and you might feel dumb. There's no such thing as that, right? It's like now I have 5 or 6 different teachers because learning never stops, right? If you stop learning, then like don't ever start a company. So yeah, so the technology was there. So I hired great people around me to develop that. The people, it's just, there's people are difficult to manage. I mean, our company right now is about 20 people. We were up to 30 at one point, had to go down to 15. Now we're slowly going up. What I learned is, I think I hired based on tech deliverables. And, like I said earlier, tech is stubborn. So I think what I learned is my motto now is instead of being 3 weeks early, I'd rather be 3 months late to hire a marketing guy if we need it. So I learned about that. The other thing I learned from my trading days, trading options, I probably made a million mistakes, bad trades, right? The thing that I think is the most transferable, and to answer your question, like if you flip that around, what is something I learned that's a positive? It would be that when you make a mistake as a leader, as an entrepreneur, you have to get out of it. Like you can't fight it. You can't go down swinging. You can't have ego. You can't have pride. You really just have to say, again, that was tuition. that was a pretty expensive, tuition bill, but that's how you have to adapt. So those are the things I learned. Yeah, I mean, it's running your own company is like, it sounds great, but like, man, when you get into it, if you don't have like the absolute passion for it, if you don't have the mental and emotional makeup where you are scared all the time, barely surviving, people will say no to you all the time, and so it's lonely. Like being an entrepreneur on the top of a company, it's lonely because you're like, you have all this stuff, right? But if you can do that, it's an unbelievable way to change the world, and we've seen that. That's how those are the people that change the world. They're bold, they're smart, they don't have tons of ego and pride when they do it, and they surround themselves with great people.
I think we're the same person. I, everything that you are saying, I am preaching and living, and I love that. So, how do you convince your significant other that it's a hobby and not an addiction? I think that speaks a lot towards people. I don't know if it's like your house, but my house comes in with packages that are not from Amazon that are, more to add to my hobby here. I don't know if, your household has the same conversations, but you run the entire company. I think that's when I need to start to transition that mindset out there. But just curious in your opinion on that.
Well, I really did it one way. My wife was getting her doctorate at Northwestern, and she was all but like dissertation. She was just about to start her dissertation, and she had a background in HR and private equity companies, and she had, so she's there. I brought her in as a co-founder. So she's my co-founder. She's the president of Ludex. She runs the operations of this company. It lets me like dream like a dreamer would, entrepreneur. So she knows that she knows the business intimately, and she put me on like, I don't buy any cards anymore. I bought a collection of like 5 million cards, and that was enough. It's in 3 storage units. It got flooded. Yeah, I have more
uh,
cards than I know what to do with. It was an insane story. You'll see it on our social media. We're going to do something about it. But yeah, so that's I stopped kind of buying. I have a decent collection of personal stuff, but just too many cards.
you get some cards from Shane. Don't worry about it. He's probably getting to that point where his wife might be sick of his cards soon enough.
Well, yeah, I mean, if your wife wants to, if you makes you unload some of that vintage TCG wax boxes, I'll take a couple of those.
Absolutely not. Never happening. But
Shane,
that
Shane,
I
be a
got
courteous host to our guest Brian.
Yeah.
okay. I'll think about it. You'll have an answer for you. But no, I got the answer. He's a smart man. Instead of having to explain your way out of it, you make your wife part of the company, and now it's like, okay, well, now you can't do anything. It's part of the
Right.
company.
Yeah.
I'm just playing, but I definitely am going to follow you because I can't wait to hear more, learn more. I definitely want to follow that story. I'm probably going to buy you out as far as all of your cards are concerned, but the ones that are not flooded and damaged, as long as they're not on TCG and marketing them as near mint, then I think we'll be okay. Uh, but
Light water exposure is what the wording
Yeah.
will be.
It's a new category.
yeah, but no, I mean, Brian, you're my type of people. I started my own card game. We've been, we're all over on Facebook groups and Instagram groups and Twitter, and right, the stuff that's out there is not. It's either not accurate, doesn't have a good reputation or community, or it's very small and niche specific, as we were discussing before this. I definitely can't wait to, get on this and learn more, and more importantly, share it to my community, which lives and breathes exactly what I do. And I think that's really what it's all about. Like, this is a very tight niche community. And especially when you have something that works, what are you going to do? You're going to tell 10 of your friends.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, the biggest thing I've had raising capital was people are like, oh, it's niche. This is niche. This is the guy in the corner who's, living with his mom who's selling comic books. And I'm like, people don't understand how big this industry is.
Mm,
I mean, it's immense. It's huge. People collect. That's part of the culture, especially in America. Someone collects something, no matter what. So it is huge. I want to learn more about your company. I'm super intrigued by that. But yeah, it's a nice industry to be a part of. It's fun.
One more thing that I want to talk about this too. You came in at the perfect freaking time. This whole community got specifically for me in 2019 when COVID hit and people had more time at home, that's when things really started popping off for trading cards and comics and collectibles in general, is when they had that more free time because they weren't going out. So what do people do? They buy crap, right? But when that turned into something and then more people were getting together and, you know, exactly what you're talking about, you're a Dodgers fan, this is your collection. Now we formed a relationship. We're talking about on a massive, massive scale since 2019. So you saw this as an opportunity at the perfect moment. And now it's not going anywhere. The people are here to stay. These collections, 90% of the people that are there, it's not going anywhere. They see this as an investment. They see this as part of their investment strategy for the future. At least that's what I do. Or they're resellers, they're flippers, they're streamers. Regardless, they're not going anywhere. This community is not going anywhere. It's huge.
Those are great points. I agree.
I love it. So, Brian, we're almost out of time here. So we got a few last things to ask you. We're going to wrap it up for the day after these. And obviously, once we're done, stick around for about a minute. We got some secret stuff to tell you. I'm playing. Where am I? The viewers will never know. So, Brian, we started the 1% podcast with the premise that being a 1%er does not mean you need to be a billionaire. It just means that you're somebody who is trying to achieve something great in this lifetime. You have people out there that are 1% cake makers or 1% push-up champions. You can be a 1% dad. It's just a way of being is what we've really come to believe what it is to be a 1%er. So our question to every guest and to you is that, what is your version of 1% lifestyle?
I mean, I think might have to answer two. So I think a 1%er is if you go through your life treating people well and working hard and giving more than you receive without being weak, I think the 1%ers really amplify that. Like a 1%er, you can start that at 10. I tell my son, he's 13. I said, you're starting your network today. I have 150 investors. I've raised $12 million, not one professional dollar. Those are all people I met in grade school and high school, and I played baseball in college, and all the people that I worked with. So I think a 1%er is like the people who really do that well. It is something that's super powerful to me. The 1%er for me is also knowledge. The people who are successful in this world never stop learning, never stop being curious.
I love that. I think that that's probably one of the better points that people have had yet to make on this podcast. I'm a big fan in believing that your network, everybody likes to say that saying your network is your net worth. I feel like that's overly quoted at this point. However, what I do love to say is relationships are rocket ships and they'll take you everywhere you want to go. So treat your relationships well, network well. That is a phenomenal point. Thank you so much for bringing that up for the listeners. And if you're listening right now, reach out to 5 people in your network, say hi, reconnect, do that every week, every month, and every year, and you will have a 1% network. So I freaking love it.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on this podcast here, is because it's a dying breed. People are afraid to talk to somebody, you know, face to face, remote, whatever it may be. It's dying, right? The old school methods of shaking somebody's hands, taking them out to dinner, taking them out to go play golf, it's non-existent anymore. So I'm glad that that's there, because we're preaching the same thing. If anything, with technology of how this is transitioning in our society, relationships are going to be that much more important to actually do. And I love that.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like that was the norm in the 80s and 90s or whatever. But the fact is, imagine if you have that same mentality today. You're not a 1%er. You're like a 0.1%er, and the success rate of that is just like it. There's low hanging fruit,
Yeah.
So yeah, I love what you guys do. I love the question, and there's so much here, and I would love to come back and talk about some other topics. Shane and I could pot off on the Ludex podcast and start talking collections. But yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And Brian, please shamelessly plug yourself. How do people get connected? What should they do to start utilizing your platform? Please let everyone know how they can start getting involved and get their, either get in touch with you or get their cards figured out.
So if you go to the App Store, it's Ludex app, LUDEX app. We're in the App Store. Download it. We have a free version. You can start scanning cards right away. We're at Ludex.com on our website, and then the Ludex app is the handles for our social media. I would love for people to come out. I love when people tell us stories about the collections. I love, the whole community. So we're a high touch company. So anyone who get on it, I would love to hear your feedback.
Well, there you have it, folks. The best way to get connected and get graded. Get the app, get in touch, leave a message. All right, no grading. Sorry, Shane.
No
Sorry.
grading.
No
Yeah.
grading. The best way to get in touch and get a pre-grading valuation. Is that better for everyone? Stop shaking your hand. You know what?
The whole point's not the price point aspect. The price point's more of like it's a bonus there, determining on the condition if it's not actually graded, but it's there to see your collection virtually, to be there on a growing society, to meet other people that have similar mindsets of whether trading, increasing your collection, selling your collection. It's like a multiversity platform.
There you go. Shane did it right. So there you go, folks. There you have it from the big man and the other big man. Like, share, subscribe, follow, comment. Let us know if you downloaded Ludex yet, and then we'll tell Brian new people have downloaded it, and we'll get a whole community going. And as always, thank you guys for joining us on the 1%. I'm your host, Vin. That's my man, Brian. And
I'm Shane. We're going to get Vin into some cards here so we can get some more knowledge into this.
Yeah, Shane's going to send me one of his big packs for free so I can really get excited about it.
He should.
Yeah, you should, Shane. Yeah.
Fine. But you know what you're looking at, but fine.
You might as well write him a $250,000 check, because that's.
Listen, I ain't got it like that, but that's what a friend's for.
If that's the case, I'm going to send you a box. But yeah, thank you so much, Brian. We'll see you guys later.
See you guys.
See you guys.